Hello, and welcome to another season of the Star Wars Minute. It's your daily podcast where we analyze, we scrutinize, and we celebrate the Rise of Skywalker, one crawly minute at a time. I'm Alex Robinson from alexrobinson.fun.
And I'm Pete the Retailer from PeteTheRetailer.com.
And today we are discussing minute 1, the very first minute of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker.
That's right. Tros.
Tros. Minute 1 starts off with the endless black soulless void, and it ends a minute later with the crawl informing us that Rey is being trained to battle the diabolical First Order.
Oh, that First Order.
The
diabolical First Order.
Yeah.
Okay. Not
the angelic First Order, the diabolical.
Benevolent brotherhood of First Order. All right, so let's step to the background for a minute. Let's talk about how this came to be. No.
Okay.
There's a lot. No, not you. As we all know, there was a lot of hubbub. Like, originally it was going to be, there was like, oh, is it going to be J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson's going to write the script based on stuff he had? And then it was like, no, it's there was somebody else that was in there for a minute that was like, they thought about, I forgot who that was, but then it was like, no, it's Colin Trevorrow and his filmmaking buddy. They're going to do it. And then they came in, and then apparently just over the course of meetings. Now, the corporate quote-unquote interference on this mainly seems to boil down to, okay, Kathleen Kennedy, Lucasfilm, they were like, okay, here are a handful of plot points that you need to hit. Like, Kylo Ren should be redeemed, and someone's like handing out a handful of things that is just like, okay, this need to happen.
You have to have stormtroopers that fly.
Other than that, yeah, they fly now, and also Kylo Ren is good. So that is basically all that it came down to, and they just threw a lot of back and forth. Apparently, Trevorrow and was it Chris Terrio, or was he the one who was working with? He's a Denny Terrio. It was a dance fever. That's why they couldn't finish. They had the fever and they couldn't stop dancing. They couldn't finish the movie. No, they basically they creatively they couldn't come to an agreement as to the direction of it. Like multiple drafts, and they just could not do anything that pleased both the suits and the filmmakers. And there's the unconfirmed script going around called Star Wars: The Duel of the Fates, which is purportedly one of the later drafts from that creative stretch. And there are things that carry over. There are things that we'll get to that are in both that, and so it apparently seems to be fairly legit. But we'll talk about that as we go on too.
I've never looked at said script.
I've started reading it just for this season. See what I'll do for the show. But
the Lee Brackett draft of the 2000s.
Yeah, exactly. It will. Well, then it changed hands again. I think they talked to David Fincher about potentially doing it, which is interesting because I feel like he came up also like, wasn't he a long shot option for? Or no, he worked on Return of the Jedi in the like behind the scenes.
I don't recall that.
I think he worked in like the effects for Jedi, but
wow,
he's tangentially always around. But there's a basically it ended up back with J.J. Abrams, and one thing I was worried when that was announced, because one thing that is fairly common knowledge that we've all said about J.J. Abrams is that he usually has problems with the third act. He's great at setting stuff up, the puzzle box, and then it kind of falls apart at the end.
If I could use a sports analogy, they should have brought in a relief, like a closing pitcher, not a starting pitcher.
Right. You know what? They should have gotten... Well, so this ties in with a... I'll skip to a review that was in the New Yorker Richard Brody from the New Yorker, did not care for this film, and said that J.J. Abrams was like basically complaining that he was stuck in kind of nostalgia. He was like a magnifier of lore and nostalgia, but didn't bring anything new to it. And then he said, it would have been better if a boldly imaginative vulgarian such as Michael Bay had instead created a derisive wreckage of Star Wars. So, but that's an interesting thing, because the purportedly, basically the way they make movies at someplace like the Asylum, which is kind of like the amplification like of the Michael Bay phenomenon. The Asylum is the ones that make all the knockoff, the pre-knockoff, the knock-ons.
The blockbuster, blockbusters coming out, and they come out with a cheap knockoff to try to beat them to the market, or at least confuse people in the marketplace to pick up their product accidentally.
And they do it cheap and quick, and they're apparently their storytelling methodology. They basically, when they're writing a movie or developing a movie at the Asylum, they'll be like, okay, write out the outline for, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, throw 1 and 2 out the window, and let's just script out Act 3. And that seems like the kind of thing maybe that we would have been looking for. That's one of the fears with J.J. Abrams, was that we weren't going to get that resolution of everything. And I will posit that perhaps it's the opposite problem, in that he's scrambling around worried about tying up so many threads while opening new boxes that that leads to some people's complaints. Now, I think let's start right off the bat in something that we can't keep it secret for too long, is that we are of kind of diametrically opposite opinions when it comes to this movie.
Yes, probably more than any of the other previous films.
Yeah, this is the furthest apart that we've ever stood. I mean, physically we're about the same, but ideologically, I love this movie, and you do not care for this movie.
I do not care for it.
Yeah,
and I'll admit I'm puzzled at your professed love of it. I'm going to take you at your word that you do love it.
I love it. Every time I go back to it, I'm like, oh yeah, this part, like, and I get excited. And there are things that I don't like as much. We'll step into some this week a little bit. There are things that I love that we'll step into this week too. But the worry that I have is always just like, wait a minute, am I just reacting to people's reactions? Like, am I liking this out of spite? But people will tell you, we'll have guests on the show this season who I saw the movie with, both the first time and the second time that I saw it in the theater. And they will tell you both times they came out with a big smile on my face and I was like, that was awesome. And there was no audience reaction yet. I was just like on board. I was like, yeah, I liked that. So, and there are dozens of us. So
I will say this, I was talking with a friend of mine and he was like, well, he knew I did not like this movie and was kind of chuckling at some schadenfreude of the fact that I was going to have to spend talking about the longest Star Wars movie. And I said, but you know what the thing is, the irony, is that I couldn't save myself. No, the irony is that the qualities that make it what I think a bad movie are not necessarily qualities that make it a bad movie to podcast about. I think it's actually a great movie to podcast about because it is overstuffed with concepts and planets and plot. Like no 2 weeks are going to be the same. There's constant, like, they're not in one place for more than 3 minutes before they're off somewhere else, meeting a new character and pursuing a new Sith holocron. So in that sense, it's not like Attack of the Clones where we're going to have a 3-week long battle droid assembly sequence or a 3-week long pod race, like that. So in that sense, I'm not looking forward to it. So
okay. Anyway, So let's set that table in that we're going to be on opposite sides of it. Coming
Not all
at
the
it
time
from both sides.
necessarily. But
Well, we'll see. Maybe we'll
that would
meet
be funny.
in the
The
middle.
stuff I did like about it, you didn't like about it.
Possibly.
Let's see. Tune in on the next Star Wars.
No, we're not there yet.
Oh yeah, each episode this season is only going to be 5 minutes long. I don't know if we talked about that either. So, yeah.
Well, going back to season 1, one of the complaints is that it is like people complain that it is kind of in opposition to Star Wars that came before in both in the grand scheme of things and in the immediate scheme of things. But let it be known that JJ consulted with both George Lucas personally about kind of the way the Force works and the kind of stuff he was doing with the Jedi and stuff like that, and also talked to Rian Johnson about well, I want to make a movie that kind of dovetails off of your movie, but is not kind of beholden to it. What can and talked through it with him. I don't know where they went from there. I don't know if that held up for, if I don't know how Rian Johnson feels about the final project, the final product rather. But he definitely did consult with people, and I think that elements of I feel like. Perhaps in a good, this is what J.J. Abrams is good at. He pulled from things that did work from the Denny Terrio version, pulled at things that did work from Rian Johnson's outline, which he may or may not have done for when he was going to be writing it. Or at least, mental outline of all right, well, if you were going to finish it, what were you going to do? And then kind of assembled that, made a potpourri of all that stuff into a movie, the movie that we're watching now. And let me also, I will acknowledge I'm bursting because I've been waiting to get to this movie. Let me acknowledge that the valid criticism of it is a bit overstuffed. There's a lot going on. But so we've talked about this, that it is, and maybe we should bring this up to our guests as we go through the season, see what they think, that there should have been, in a Hobbit style, or Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter style, they should have basically turned this into 2 movies, whereas one movie wrapped up the sequel trilogy and one movie wrapped up the saga as a whole. You know what I mean? So focus on the stuff that you're saying, oh, well, we're just hopping around, we don't get time to look at anything or anything like that. Take your time, establish the story, finish up the sequel trilogy in a movie, and have that be table setting for something that, then have the Emperor come back in episode 10, which wraps up the entire saga. It's a possibility that we've thrown out there. Would that work? What would you put in which part?
I think I think by saying that, you're kind of admitting the movie has a big flaw in it. Why would you say it should be,
sister?
But why would you say it should be spread out into 2 movies why not just make one movie that has both of those elements in it? Why would you say, okay, let's keep everything in this movie, but then we also have another movie to wrap up the plot points that are brought up in this last movie?
No, but
if it's episode 9 of the saga, why are you it should all be about wrapping up the plot points of the saga. It shouldn't be about introducing new characters and.
There's a difference between wrapping up the trilogy in which it's in and wrapping up the entire saga, the nonology, So I think that trying to serve both of those things maybe makes it seem a bit cluttered. Again, not to me. I like it. I like the way it moves. I like I enjoy this movie, but I also see how there could be possibility for that. Basically, I like it so much. If you split it into 2 movies and expanded it a little bit,
yeah,
I might be into it. Or an extended edition. I don't know. But I think just cyclically they were so stuck into trilogies that there's a bunch of stuff that they could have addressed, but they were like, no, trilogies. Which is the snake eating its own touch. Star Wars created this, no, things have to go in trilogies kind of idea. Not created it, but, a lot of, blockbuster sagas are beholden to the, 3-act structure when it comes to movie releases
Yeah.
versus, okay, well, but you're pulling at something bigger here also, so why not have an kind of over stuff that pulls more from the prequels and the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy and wraps it all up into one big, have that be, everybody showing up to kind of, curtain call, say goodbye as they all get band together to fight the resurrected emperor one more time. Anyway, we'll talk through it as we go through.
Well, I also think relating to that question, I think it goes back to sort of a complaint. I don't know complaint, but I feel like there should have been more planning from the start. The fact that Rian Johnson's trilogy closes off so many, like it wraps up it answers a lot of questions that possibly should have been held for the third episode. Rey's parentage, the end of Snoke, all that stuff. And I'm not complaining about The Last Jedi in that sense.
But I think those are issues with The Last Jedi. That's what I'm saying. He's closing doors.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying that. So what they should have done is from the start had at least a rough outline of how this was going to go. And I feel like they didn't start doing that until they got to after Last Jedi was complete. And they're like, well, now what do we do?
I think they did have, again, I think they had plot points for what each one was going to, they had things that had to happen in each one. I think so.
From the start.
They started. From the start. And I think it came from JJ and Kathleen Kennedy, kind of with some outline ideas for things that had to happen, broad strokes, bullet point items that had to happen in each one. But then also, I don't think, granted, it's different because it's coming from, the mind of one guy, but the only trilogy that was planned stem to stern was the prequel trilogy, and that doesn't make it better.
I would argue the prequel trilogy is better as a unit than the sequel trilogy. The prequels have their flaws, but the flaws I think are with the kind of execution. Overall, the plot is you're following this one character and his rise and fall. Whereas I feel like the sequel trilogy is kind of all over the place, and the last movie specifically contradicts a lot of the points of the second movie. Rey goes from being children of garbage scours to being now suddenly the Empress of the Universe. Rey.
Let's not believe the words of villains.
Right, but okay, but I'm just saying. But okay, so then Kylo Ren goes from being like he's throwing away his helmet, he's a new person, he's throwing away the past, and the first thing he does in this movie is put his helmet back together again and put it back on, and he's like, I'm Darth Vader again. Like it's
not the first. We'll get there because it's all like it gets to it. There's a reason why he does that.
Okay,
and we'll see it.
Right. Well, I have a quick. Well, I wanted to do this in minute one because it was. I wanted to see how well we remembered the movie. Have you watched it? What's your history with watching it?
I saw it, like I said, I think twice in the theater. Here in Los Angeles. I think this is the first one that I was here in LA for. I saw it at the dearly departed ArcLight Cinemas here in Pasadena, and then went to I think the AMC Burbank or went to see it in LA with some LA friends, and it was the first time I was just like, yes, this is part of the reason why I came here. I have all these, like fun friends to go do things with, and not that I have a lot of good fun friends to do stuff in New York, but this is one of the benefits is like, oh yeah, going to hang out with new friends out and do things. And then of course that was shortly before the pandemic put a kibosh on all of that, but including the theater. So
I remember a friend of mine, once COVID was happening, he's like, isn't it weird that like all these, like the Marvel MCU saga wrapped up, or the Thanos part of the MCU wrapped up, the Star Wars saga wrapped up, the last Harry Potter movie, all these like big things ended, and then COVID came and kind of like shut everything down. I think that was
right.
He was like, maybe it was like this was meant to happen or something. Anyway, so you saw those 2 times in the theater. You never watched it on home video?
Yeah, I have seen it on home video, not a bunch of times, but a handful of times. And it's the kind of thing where I will anytime I start to put it on, I'm like, oh yeah, this part, and I get sucked into it, and I will usually watch more of it than I intend to.
So you mean like if it's on TV and you?
Nothing's on TV anymore.
No, but I mean, do you sit down to say I'm going to sit? Do you sit down to watch the movie, or do you? Is it someone else watching it? And you walk into the room, and how do you? How
if I'm either testing something out, or like when I got the Blu-ray in order for us to do this thing, and when I got the Blu-ray, then I was just kind of making sure that things lined up, and I ended up watching more of it than I wanted to when it first came out on video, or like Disney Plus kind of a thing. And when it's on, it's on. What about you? You saw it?
I saw it twice in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was in Vancouver, Washington, just north of Portland. I forget where the first time I saw it was. And I think I watched once when Disney Plus came out. I think I watched when it arrived on Disney Plus. I think I watched chunks of it. But really, I've not watched it in any meaningful way since seeing it in the theater for the last time. So, should we talk about the minute first, or you want to do the quiz first?
Let's talk about the minute real quick, and then we'll wrap with the quiz.
Sure.
I mean, not
so we start with the crawl. The
Yes.
last opening crawl for the foreseeable future. I wonder if this will be the last Star Wars crawl ever.
Oh, boy. No.
You think eventually? I feel like they'll eventually bring
they'll
it back for nostalgia purposes.
Right.
But anyway, so it starts with the dead speak.
The dead speak.
Which, contrary to what you might think, I actually love that opening.
Nice. Me too.
So I love that line, the dead speak. It's goofy. It's very Lucasian.
Mm-hmm.
And I like it.
It's like war, like that one.
Yeah, exactly.
The dead speak. It's much, again, like I think not as kind of didactic and kind of like matter of factly as like, oh, it is a period of civil war. It's not as much table setting. It's hyperbolic. But I mean, so is journalism as in the intervening years. So maybe it matches, the original, the motion picture opening crawl is more of a kind of New York Times kind of thing, whereas this is like a New York Post, USA Today kind of headline.
Or it's like a clickbait. The dead speak. What?
Right.
I got to keep reading that, and so on.
I wouldn't even be newspapers. I'm like, I'd be like, what's a modern newspaper? There are no newspapers. I as much as I love them are sorry.
We soon learned that we have been receiving mysterious broadcasts from Palpatine claiming that he is alive and he's going to exact his revenge on everyone.
Now, the galaxy has received a mysterious broadcast.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that's like
Galaxy's inbox must be stuffed with
right? Yeah. Still alive. Do you think is that like a strong, powerful signal that it's like reaching everywhere from one source, or is it like is it almost like a meme that's getting kind of like reshared and like people are like rebroadcasting it, retweeting it, spreading it around? Or is it like one like beep 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 like from Exegol, just like the RKO thing?
Attention, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all the ships at sea, I have returned.
Right. Exactly.
But the fact that they specifically say it's a broadcast is not even that they received a message, that it's a broadcast. To me, it gives the impression that it is kind of like taking over it's like the emergency broadcast system. It's interfering with all the signals. And I have to assume that considering he has 100 Star Destroyers, each with the power of a Death Star at his disposal, probably hacking into the communication system would be pretty small potatoes for such a
it's still
thing.
The galaxy.
But,
I mean, there are networks,
Yeah.
around. It's not like one thing. It's like hitting different things that are then all right.
Yeah. I think you just
I'm not going to get held up on the technical. Yeah.
Yeah.
The dead speak.
So the two questions I have with that are, why does he do this?
Mm-hmm.
And why does anyone believe it? if someone did a broadcast saying, "This is Adolf Hitler, I am alive and I'm returning," no one would believe that it was Hitler coming back.
Like weirdo fringe, like people who are into that would potentially believe that.
Yeah.
And also like,
But also, we don't see that the galaxy
The
does
wizard.
anything. Only Leia, and Kylo Ren, like, the
Right.
galaxy is apparently totally unfazed by any of these outside forces. They didn't rally to the First Order to fight the First Order. They just kind of like, eh. So maybe they really like Palpatine. Maybe we're seeing this all from like, a
certain
band of
point of view.
terrorists overthrew the government. And everyone's like, what? The president's coming back? That's awesome. Great.
Right.
Come on, hurry back and get these nuts out of here. These religious extremists. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely, I think mainly he's doing it because he knows the right people will, like, essentially for what happens to happen. Like, he wants the people who are, like, interested and capable of finding him, a.k.a. Kylo Ren, is pretty much it. Maybe one or two other, I love that there would be other scenes of other people showing up being like, Sir Mr. Papatine here? But
Moses, what's that guy's name? Alu. They got all the other
Simalu?
Simalu and
right. Masamida. Just
Masmida
like,
will
hey,
show up.
got some old mail.
Yeah.
And
the other question is, if he's trying to just get Kylo Ren, why not just send a message directly to Kylo Ren?
Kylo Ren is the king of fear around the galaxy.
Like Kylo Ren is already controlling the whole he's the supreme lord of the galaxy. Why not just stroll right into town and going, I'm back, everyone?
Because he can't yet. He's not powerful enough to really to leave Exegol. He's attached to all those machines, and he's just kind of
it's true.
A specter. He's a shell of what he once was.
It's like he's hooked up to his. He's like almost like a Darth Vader, except Darth Vader had a portable machine keeping him alive.
Right.
He's kind of stuck to a.
Right.
And
I think so. This is like a show of like, hey, everybody, be afraid, and then also like, if you need me, you know where to get me. If you can find me, it's like.
Yeah.
So it's kind of springing that like, all right, he needs Kylo Ren to be on board with what he's doing in order to make it happen. So he's sending out this message to not only get everybody afraid, which kind of sets the stage for what he's doing, but also to let Kylo Ren know to come over.
But if Kylo Ren had not taken the bait,
he would, because he knows the way it works. Or maybe there are like two other like instances. Yeah. Maybe Kylo Ren does have unread emails from Palpatine being like,
we know Palpatine,
could use your help for a project. I don't know if you're interested. Just, let me know. No pressure.
Yeah. Most Def, can you make sure Kylo Ren got my message? I just want to make sure he read it. And I guess we do know that Palpatine loves backup plans and multiple levels to all his plans. So, I'm sure this was... Kylo Ren might have been his third choice to come see him. And he's like, all right, I'll take you.
Yeah. Why is Snoke not answering?
Yeah. So that's all I have about the opening. Oh no, well, Princess General Leia dispenses her agents, her secret agents. I like that because it goes all the way back to the Empire sending out their sinister agents. So it's a nice bit of ring theory there. I like that.
Yeah, it does. Well, so I'll talk about it in tomorrow. Because the crawl extends until tomorrow. But take note of that, like, General Leia Organa, in all caps, which is interesting. So it's like, as she said, like, kind of, she has mainly been going by General and not Princess. Remember, in the original movie is Princess Leia.
Sure.
And now it's, she's, by her own design, she's General.
Yeah. To me, she's royalty. But
right. But
that's as far as I'm going to go. Yeah.
But yeah, all right. Yeah. Then the crawl kind of extends until tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we can throw some more stuff on there. I want to talk about capitalization and what have you. And what about? Should we save our quiz for tomorrow too, or are we? Yeah. Can we hold will the quiz keep? Put it in the fridge?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right.
The longer we go, the less good it'll be because stuff will start to be revealed that is in the quiz, but it'll keep till tomorrow.
All right. Well, just got the end of the crawl and the beginning. Well, spoilers about what comes up tomorrow. More crawl and just a taste of the action, a piece of the action.
Wrong show. All right, well, I guess that will wrap up minute number 1 of The Rise of Skywalker. So what should we plug first? Well, why not do the social medias, which is kind of in a state of flux at the time we're recording this. But as of this recording, we are on Twitter at Star Wars Minute. We are on Instagram at The Star Wars Minute. And there's the Star Wars Minute Listener Society over on Facebook. And we signed up for a Hive account as well, right? If that's still going at the time this is airing?
No, Hive is down last time I checked. But, but again, this is by the time it airs, who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, Hive, Mastodon, any of those things, usually we will be either Star Wars Minute or The Star Wars Minute. So
yes.
Take a look. See if you find us.
And then join us on the next Star Wars Minute.
Star Wars Minute. Oh, I forgot we had to do that.